Hello and welcome to another Greenfoot tutorial. In the previous videos we introduced some physics into our world to allow our ball to bounce around. We have also given our snake the ability to move, and in this video we will give him the ability to shoot, and we will also be using some logic to override some of the problems which we will see that are going to arise. If you're interested in these kinds of tutorials, I'm launching a course in Greenfoot. You can check out the link in the description or check out our page Kids Code on Facebook for more information on courses like these. Okay, so let's jump right in.
Now we want to let our snake be able to shoot at the ball. So let's start by creating a new actor. And we're going to call this actor the bullet. This is the bullet that the snake will be shooting at the ball. So you can just grab this red dot over here. You can obviously use whatever you want. And let's see, we don't actually want to create a new bullet and put it in the world at the start of the game like we've done before. We want our snake to create this bullet when the spacebar is shot. When the spacebar is pressed, we want our snake to shoot the bullet up at the ball. So let's open the editor of the snake, and we can add another if statement over here that if the spacebar is down, and we've seen this method being called before. So if greenfoot.is key down, and in the brackets we will put in space, then we're going to call the shoot method. So let's type in the shoot method. And of course, this is not going to compile since the shoot method has not been written out. Let's write that on the bottom here. Like we've done before, we're going to have it be a public method. We're going to have no return value, and we're going to have no input either. Okay. And we are just missing another bracket over there. So if we are hitting the space, we are going to do the shoot method. So what do we want this shoot method to do? We want it to spawn one of those bullets. And we've seen before in our world how we can create a new object using the add object method. And we were also looking a bit at this line of code, which I kind of skipped over. And what is happening over here is we are creating a new variable. And we've seen how we can create variables before using the int or the boolean. And this time we aren't creating a variable of a number or a boolean. We are creating a variable of type snake. And that's a variable like this. And we can also create a variable of type ball. We then gave it a name, and we called the new snake method to assign the snake a value. So we're creating a variable of type snake, giving it a name, and then just creating a new object to assign it to this, and then we can use it in our add object method over here. Let's do the same thing, only this time we want to create a new object of type bullet. We will call it bullet with a small b. Notice how that Java will recognize the difference between the big B and the small b. We're then going to call the new bullet method to create a new bullet. Okay, now we want to use the add object method to put this bullet somewhere into our world. Let's just start by putting some zeros over there. And we're going to see that we're getting a compiling error over here. And this might seem a little bit strange, since when we were working from the my world, when we were creating these objects, this add object method seemed to be working just fine. So why is my snake not being able to recognize this? And the reason for this is because the world is in a different class than the snake. And I will go into a little more detail on the difference between the classes and the subclasses. But just for now, you will see that my world is connected to the world with an arrow. And the snake, the bullet, and the ball are connected to the actor with an arrow. And this means that these objects are a subclass of the actor class. And this object is a subclass of this class. So if there's a method in the world, I will not be able to access it from my actor objects since they are not subclasses of it. Okay, so we can just go ahead and bypass this problem by creating a variable of the world as we've done before. We will name it world with a small w. And this time we don't want to create a new world, we just want to get the current world, and we can use the getWorld method for that. And then instead of writing addObject, we will go ahead and write world.getObject. So this will go into the world, which we've created over here, and grab the addObject method. And now we can see that it's compiling, and the addObject, and we can access the addObject method from the world by creating a variable of it. I actually don't want it to be in the 0, 0. I want it to be in the getX of my snake. And I want it to be just a little bit above his head, so the getY plus 10. In our bullet over here in the act method, we're just going to set the location of the bullet by the getX, so we don't want it moving on the X, and the getY plus the change, plus some sort of change. And we will give this bullet a change variable. Let's just have it equal to -50 for now. So when this bullet comes to life, it will just constantly be going up. The X will stay the same, and the getY will be changing by the change variable. Okay, so we saw that we have some problems over here. If I hit the spacebar, we don't just have a single bullet being spawned. We have about 5 or 6 of them. I'm pressing the spacebar really quickly, and still about 5 or 6 of them are being spawned. And the reason for this is that you will remember that the act method is being called several times per second. And by the time I press the spacebar and lift it up, this act method has already been called several times. And then before my finger has the opportunity to lift up on the spacebar, the shoot method has already been called about 5 or 6 times. So we obviously don't want that. We want 1 bullet per spacebar. So let's just see how we can work around that. Okay, so let's just think about exactly what it is we want to be doing here. We want to take this is key down idea and separate it into 2 different ideas: the pressed and the is key down. So let's create a variable for that, calling it a boolean. We're going to name it pressed, and it can, because it's a boolean, it can receive either true or false. And since at the beginning of the game it is not being pressed, we'll just have it equal to false. And we want this boolean variable of pressed to only appear once or for the smallest amount of time possible by our computer. Okay, and since we're differentiating between these two, we only want our computer to run this code when they are not equal. So when one is true, the other will receive false, and only then do we want our computer to actually do something. So let's differentiate between these two in this statement, and we'll say that pressed equals to not, and the exclamation point is just a not. So it's whatever Greenfoot is keyed down isn't. And we want to give this the space variable. So only if they are different, we are going to be we're going to want to run this code. And since this pressed variable is only going to be getting true for a single second, or for the smallest amount of time possible, we are immediately just going to have this equal to not pressed. And then we only want our code to be running if the pressed is receiving true. So let's have here a if pressed, and this is just short for if pressed equals true. Only then are we going to be running, are we going to be spawning the bullet. Okay, so let's just close off these curly brackets, clean up a bit of our code. Okay, so let's just go over this one time and just to see to understand what we're seeing. We are at the beginning of the game, so press is equal to false, and the is key down is also equal to false since we are not actually pressing the spacebar. Once the spacebar is being pressed, so the is key down over here is going to be receiving true, and the pressed is receiving false because that's what we had starting at. And now press equal to not is key down, they are different, so we're going into this if statement. Pressed immediately changes to whatever not pressed is, so it's going to be receiving true now. And then if pressed equals to true, we're going to spawn our bullet, and so we have spawned it once when we press the spacebar for the first time, which is what we wanted. Now next time we go into this if statement, since they are both receiving true, then this if statement will be getting false, and we will just skip over this entire piece of code. And once we let go of our spacebar, so the is key down will now be receiving false, then this if statement will be getting true, since they are not equal to each other. One is getting true and the other is false. Pressed will immediately be changed, so pressed will receive false now, and this if statement will also receive false since pressed is not true, and we will skip over our code, and now we are right back to where we started, having spawned the bullet only once, which is exactly what we wanted. Okay, so I'm pressing the spacebar and nothing seems to be happening, so let's just have a look at our code, see what the problem is. And over here inside this if statement, we want to be asking a question if they are equal or not. And in order to ask that question, the exclamation point needs to come before the equal sign. So this asks the question if pressed doesn't equal to is key down. And then if it's after the equal sign, like it's over here, it is assigning not pressed to pressed. So this time, this code should be working. Okay, so this time my snake is firing some bullets up in the air. And even if I hold down the spacebar, then it's only going to fire one single bullet at a time. Okay, now we also just want to get rid of the bullets when they reach the top. So let's go into our bullet editor and write some code for it over here. We're going to say that if the get y is small r equal to 0, then we're going to call the destroy method, which we will write out now. And destroy method is going to be public void destroy. It's going to have no input and no output. And like the add object method, we can also use the remove object method. And we can type in this to remove this object. And like before, we can't just call the remove object method since it's coming from the world. And this time, instead of getting a variable, I'm just going to call the get world method and call the remove object method from the world. Okay, so let's have a look at that. Now, every spacebar fires one bullet, and when they reach the top, they disappear. Okay, so in this video, we allowed our snake to start shooting. We encountered some problems with pressing the spacebar, and we were able to override those problems by using some extra logic and to introduce it into the game. Be sure to like and subscribe and leave us your thoughts and questions in the comments, and stay tuned for the future videos.